Hi, this is Tutor Nick T, and this is Lesson 63. Today we're going to look at the difference between predictable and foreseeable. Yeah, sometimes these two could seem very, very similar. But if we look closely, there are very clear ways that we're much more likely to use one as opposed to the other in certain situations. So let's look at the first definition here, predictable. If you think something is predictable, it is clear to see before time that it is likely to happen. Yeah, it's the very general definition. Let's look at the second one too. Somebody who is predictable is very likely to behave or respond in a particular way. All right, this is one very clearly right off. Is we're much more likely to use the word predictable with people's behavior. When people often behave in a certain way, and we can pretty much guess they're going to behave that way because they behaved that way so many times in the past. Yeah, we're more likely to say predictable than foreseeable. And again, that's another thing that comes up later. Things that happen a lot is more likely to be with predictable. Foreseeable is things that happen less often. So let's take a look at the first one, the first example here. The end of that movie was very predictable. Yeah, with movies, we don't usually say the movie was foreseeable. Especially here when we say the movie was predictable, we're talking about the plot. The plot, you could kind of, sometimes, we've seen so many movies in our lifetime that a lot of times a lot of themes or a lot of plots follow a similar pattern. And, if you're smart enough, sometimes you could figure it out. And a lot of times they want the happy ending anyway. So a lot of times you can kind of guess what's going to happen before you see the end of the movie, even though you've never seen it before. It's very predictable. You wouldn't say it was foreseeable. That wouldn't make sense in this sense. Okay, so all right, let's look at example number 2. I knew she would be late again. It's very predictable. All right, this is an example we're using with somebody's behavior. So with behavior, especially a behavior that's very repetitive, definitely go with predictable. Okay, good. That political pundit is very biased. Yeah, like one of those people on the talk show. And obviously, usually each political pundit sometimes favors one political party over the other. And you get to know, so he's always going to be for one party and against the other. So you can pretty much guess what his opinion is going to be the far majority of the time. So you could say that political pundit is very biased and his response is predictable because, you learned who he was, you learn which party he favors and what he's most likely going to say. Okay, let's look at number 4. Now this one is if something is predictable also tends to be more exact. And if something could be calculated or figured out, right exactly when it's going to happen, then it's, again, predictable would be more common than foreseeable. So Halley's Comet, the one that we know goes by every 79 years, will return, is very predictable. When Halley's Comet will return is very predictable. It can be calculated down to the exact day. So in this case, we would say predictable, not foreseeable, definitely. It's very exact. We can calculate it exactly, predictable. All right, so what's foreseeable? Foreseeable, something that seems reasonable to be expected. Something that is foreseeable can be a natural and clear result of other factors. So, yeah, especially analysts, people who are looking at things and judging, it's going to happen sooner or later. Usually they're not very good at saying exactly when it's going to happen, though. And sometimes with foreseeable, it's going to happen, or you have a strong feeling it's going to happen, but sometimes it takes a lot longer than you might think it's going to happen, too. So foreseeable would tend to be used more in that way. Foreseeable, again here, foreseeable is not used with things that happen a lot. So things that happen all the time, no, then we'd probably be more likely to be using predictable. All right, so here's some good examples for that. The next financial crisis is a foreseeable event. I cannot pinpoint the day, so you can't tell the day exactly it's going to begin. or when it will hit the hardest. But the level of debt cannot go on forever, meaning, maybe the world's in a lot of debt. A lot of financial analysts say that, sooner or later, the bubble's got to pop or something like that. And the next financial crisis will be here. Now, again, some of them have been saying this sometimes for several years. So sometimes when it's foreseeable, it's going to happen. But like I said, it's not as exact. You can't always pinpoint it, as I used in this example. Yes, it may take longer than originally thought. But again, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It probably still will happen, but just not yet. But it's foreseeable that that it's probably going to happen. Number 2, that couple's relationship has been going downhill for years. Their divorce was foreseeable. Well, you can see it coming. Maybe you hoped it didn't come. Not in 100% of the cases it will happen, but you could see that it was very likely to happen. You could see it was probably coming. Maybe their relationship was getting worse and worse as time went by. And by the time it did happen, it probably wasn't a surprise to you. So it was foreseeable. That's what we mean. Let's take a look at the third one. After the personal computer, which basically, the PC, the personal computer hit the market, we're going way back to the 80s and the 90s. First it was in companies, then it was in people's homes, probably more like in the early 90s. It was foreseeable that the traditional typewriter would eventually become obsolete. Yeah, you could say that when there's a new invention of something that's better. So with things that are obsolete, if something new and better comes out, it doesn't all happen in a day, but a lot of people could predict that, well, this is probably going to go out. This is foreseeable. They predict things like that now, or you could say things like that are foreseeable now. About a lot of newspaper companies, already a lot have gone out of business and failed, but it's foreseeable in the future that more will probably go out of business. More magazines will probably go out of business. Maybe more of the news will go more online in the future. Okay, so again, just to review, predictable, especially when it's more exact, and especially if it can be calculated exactly, use predictable. People's behavior, use predictable. That's usually repeated a lot, so use predictable with that. Movie plots, we use predictable. Okay, and foreseeable, especially people who judge things or study things and they see that it's likely and they know what's coming. But again, usually you cannot say exactly when, but you feel strongly that it is coming. Then that is foreseeable. Okay. Well, I hope that clarifies it. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.